Hey guys, it's Lee and Michelle, your hosts of Resistance Chicks. Today is Thursday, August 3rd, 2017. We are about to take down Satan! Satan, that is. And Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to help us do that.
He's the man with the plan. Okay,
down
I just
Satan,
to bring you
devil.
up his Twitter. You should be following Robert Kennedy Jr. He's on the forefront on the vaccines. And so there is a lawsuit out from people who have been injured by Roundup. And I'm very excited about this, and I'm also very excited that there have been some leaked emails. Not necessarily leaked, but they've come forward. They weren't actually supposed to, but they've come forward. And so I'm very excited about this, which show finally what we all knew.
Look at these space aliens here. Now, these space aliens wear their space suits when they spray the space spray on the food that you get to eat. And they wear the spacesuits to protect themselves from dying from the stuff that they're spraying on your food.
Right.
And still, inside of their little spacesuits, they're still getting sick and dying themselves.
Okay, so these secret documents, okay, were just released that show Monsanto's attempt to influence writers and bribe scientists. Now, if you have maybe some farmer friends, like we do.
We are your farmer friends.
Who use, well, we have other farmer friends.
We don't use this stuff.
Farmer friends who use Roundup,
yes.
who use the GMO corn, who use Monsanto things.
Yep.
They will say things like, it's proven safe, I'm fine, I'm spraying less chemicals. Farmers don't really want to spray chemicals.
Nope.
In some cases, the GMO corn has allowed some farmers to spray less. In some cases, there's actually more Roundup being sprayed now by farmers than before GMO corn.
Okay, you guys are all familiar with the fact that we shouldn't be taking massive amounts of antibiotics because we're creating super viruses. The exact same thing is happening with the weeds. We are creating super weeds that are immune to the Roundup. So they're having to spray more and more Roundup. And we are talking directly to local farmers down the street that are telling us this. This is their personal experience, but they're stuck because now they have depleted the soil and they have ruined their land because now they have trained the soil that we can't grow without the fertilizers and the pesticides and things like that, which is really unfortunate.
So also we're going to link to these so you can read through it yourself. Dozens of documents include text messages and emails among Monsanto employees discussing Roundup's safety, as well as their communications with writers and researchers. Now stick with me, you guys, because we've heard of the active ingredient glysophate. Now, you have seen that for every one study that shows it's harmful, you'll see one study that shows it's not harmful. And if you stick with me, I'm going to show you just what's really harmful about these Roundup sprays. So don't go anywhere. This is really important. I want all of you to keep watching. But I want to get to these released documents first. They were released by one of the law firms representing a group of gardeners, farmers, agriculture workers who are suing Monsanto over allegations that glyphosate, a key chemical in Roundup, caused them to develop cancer. Now, I'm going to take you through the fact that the inert ingredients might be even more harmful than the glyphosate.
Which is kind of, I think, one of the bigger issues that we're going to deal with in this episode.
Exactly. So stick with me, please. This is really important. These documents follow records released in March that, among other things, revealed company ties to an official at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, prompting an investigation into possible collusion. Where have we heard that word before? Between Monsanto, I will continue to refer to them as Monsanto, and the EPA staffer. This is a look behind the curtain. Brent Wisner, an attorney from the firm that released the documents, told this journalist.
He says that these show that Monsanto has deliberately been stopping studies that look bad for them, ghostwriting literature, and engaging in a whole host of corporate malfeasance. They, Monsanto, have been telling everybody that these products are safe because regulators have said they are safe, but it turns out that Monsanto has been in bed with U.S. regulators while misleading European regulators.
They show Monsanto executives colluding with corrupted EPA officials to manipulate and bury scientific data. Now, the EPA will say that glyphosate might be possibly safe for you, even though there are countries who label it as carcinogenic or possible carcinogenic.
Really bad for your thyroid, for one.
Endocrine disruptor, exactly. However, I'm going to show you that they have purposefully only been studying glyphosate glyphosate, rather than the inert ingredients, which are the secret ingredients that could actually be killing you, because when put together, they become a toxic cocktail.
And I want to plug the episode and the blog that Leah had done on the lowering of the men's sperm count.
Exactly.
Because what we're going to get to here in a minute, I hate to sound like a commercial, like this is what's coming up, is the fact that these inert ingredients that they're telling you are safe are really showing that they are reducing fertility in males.
The gonads aren't growing on the frogs. Now, I know that you guys are all like, Alex Jones and the frogs and the frogs and the frogs, but you guys, this is how they test these things.
Right.
Okay? They test them on animals, okay?
Which is unfortunate.
And so they have found that Western men have a lower sperm count, but still, y'all don't want to put two and two together. So when I was saying corn, everybody's like, I don't think it's corn and soybean. I was talking about the chemicals,
I'm sorry that we
the GMOs, and the Roundup. I'm not talking about corn that you eat off the cob.
You have to forgive
popcorn.
Leah and I for assuming
smarter than
that you already know these things. When we talk about corn, we're talking about Roundup Ready, Monsanto GMO corn.
It has to be sprayed with Roundup.
If you guys don't know that, you got a lot of catching up to do here.
Yeah, I can't spoon feed everyone this stuff. I got corn. I'm not convinced it's the corn, man. I'm like, seriously, you guys are just.
However, soy itself has been known to increase estrogen in males.
Right. Exactly. So
just by itself.
They have purchased peer review to conceal information about Roundup's carcinogenicity, its toxicity, its rapid absorption into the human body, and its horrendous risks to public health and the environment. We can now prove that all Monsanto's claims about glyphosate's safety were misconcocted by amoral propaganda and lobbying teams. Glyphosate, Roundup's active ingredient, is the most heavily used agricultural chemical in history. Although the popular weed killer has been approved by the U.S. regulators for decades, like DDT, Agent Orange, glyphosate is often condemned by environmentalists and food safety advocates who worry about hormone disruption and the contentious debate over whether glyphosate causes cancer, as well as its role in the pesticide treadmill. It was deemed a probable human carcinogen by the WHO in 2015, and in June, California announced it would add glyphosate to the state's list of known cancer-causing chemicals. More than 700 pages of documents also reveal Monsanto's efforts to discredit the WHO classification, which was issued by the agency's internal agency for research on cancer.
International.
Okay, so earlier this year, Reuters published a supposedly damning story which posted that the academic who led the IARC's inquiry into glyphosate misled the organization about its findings, and it goes on to say, you know, it's fine, we're fine, we're all fine here. Here is where it gets really crazy, and
buckle up.
The chemical agencies and groups are only required to list the active ingredients. They're not required to list.
So what kills the weed is the glyphosate.
Right.
But what's killing you is the inert ingredients and their combination with the glyphosate.
Right. There's several inert ingredients, and actually we only know of a few of them because some researchers went and bought bottles of Roundup, different formulations, and broke them down, broke them apart. And then they couldn't even get their hands on some of these chemicals because, as I was reading the article, the scientist said that chemical manufacturers aren't really... they
don't want to just go selling this kind of stuff to just anybody that's going to research how bad they are. So they only sell these things to the manufacturers that are going to produce in mass, the chemical companies themselves. So it is hard to get your hands on these.
So one of these ingredients I want to talk to you guys about is POEA. It's a surfactant or detergent derived from animal fat. It is added to Roundup and other herbicides to help them penetrate the plant surfaces. But remember this, if it's penetrating the plant surfaces, then it's going to be penetrating your body membranes as well, okay? And these scientists did these studies on just glyphosate itself, which they found to be harmful, but not as harmful as when you added these other ingredients where rats were bleeding out the nose.
It's like this, but way worse. Alcohol, bad for you. Oxycontin, bad for you. Mix them together, super bad for you.
Right. So in one French study, researchers tested 4 different Roundup formulations. I read another study where they tested like 9, all containing the POEA and the glyphosate at concentrations below the recommended lawn and agricultural dose.
Below the recommended law on the agriculture dose, meaning they're testing this lower. Okay, does that make sense? So now read the results.
They tested the POEA and the glyphosate separately to determine which caused more damage to the embryonic, placental, and umbilical cord cells. The glyphosate, the POEA, and all 4 Roundup formulations damaged all 3 cell types. The umbilical cord cells were especially sensitive to POEA. Glyphosate became more harmful when combined with POEA, and POEA alone was more deadly to cells than glyphosate.
I need to take this back to a real story. I'm going to make it very brief. Up the street, one of our local farmers swears that his wife had a miscarriage because she was out in the greenhouse spraying Roundup. Right. Or not even just Roundup. It was kind of one of those fertilizers where you can spray it on the plant and will only kill the weeds and not the plant. She was spraying that, and then she had a miscarriage. So rather, and unfortunately, and I love this farmer, rather than stopping the use of all chemicals, because in today's day and age right now you can't, or you hardly can, he just told any woman that could possibly be expecting that they weren't allowed to be the spraying of the chemicals. But what he doesn't realize is we're consuming it.
Right, so using these different placental cell lines, which multiply and respond to chemicals rapidly, and fresh umbilical cord cells, Seralini's team was able to determine how the chemicals combine to damage cells. The 2 ingredients work together to limit the breathing of the cells, stress them, and drive them towards suicide. And I just find this incredibly maddening.
We have all of these disabilities in children now, and birth defects, and other people. Well, I'm not out in a greenhouse spraying Roundup on my plants. No, it's worse. You're eating it.
This is really important, okay? Now, when we're talking about the concentrations, listen to these numbers. They did studies that range from the typical agriculture or lawn dose down to concentrations 100,000 times more dilute than the products sold on the shelves.
That's massive.
100,000 times more diluted. Imagine you get one box of Roundup. You would think that if you diluted that 100,000 times, they still saw cell damage at all levels.
That's what I'm saying. You're consuming these products that have this in it. Everything that you're eating, if it does not say organic, and we have reached the place where now even organic isn't even that good.
Monsanto's toxologist says this is just not a good model for the whole organism, like a human being. Like a human being. Listen, there are tiny microscopic organisms that live and breathe. It's well known that if you spray these things, all life dies. Mm-hmm. We have a farmer friend who says all life dies. Bunnies, squirrels, worms. You think a worm's gonna live through this thing?
No.
But we're just talking about human beings, okay? It doesn't just kill you if you just put your finger on it.
We're very resilient beings, which is why rather than everybody dying, we're ending up deformed. Have you guys seen, you just see people walking the streets. I'm telling you, you think it's because of like fats, high calories, a sedentary lifestyle. Yes, those things contribute a little bit, but really what is making Americans specifically unhealthy is Roundup in the food. Now, hands down.
Now, here's the thing. In 2005, University of Pittsburgh ecologists added Roundup at the manufacturer's recommended dose to ponds filled with frog and toad tadpoles. When they returned 2 weeks later, they found that 50 to 100% of the populations of several species of tadpoles had been killed. Now, we see this, oh, a frog died. They are saying that Roundup is fine as soon as it hits the ground and washes away. Fine to all life.
It's not.
You are killing, they are literally messing with the life systems that go around. We wonder, everybody talks about climate change. This is global earth engineering. This is like, what's that butterfly effect?
It's exactly what I was getting ready to say. The butterfly effect is that if you step on a butterfly, if you don't know this, I can't help you, but I'm going to try to explain it. You step on a butterfly back in the past, you got a time machine. Step on a butterfly, and then some animal doesn't get to eat that butterfly or something like that, and it continues to go down the line, and the next thing you know, someone's not born, somebody doesn't get married, you know, the pilot's not on the right plane, the plane crashes, whatever. But what we have right now is on a massive scale. We can't go back in time. We're living it. And what Roundup and Monsanto have done, they are messing up our future. So we only have now, while we live in it, to fix the future. Because once we're there, we can't come back.
Right there, I was really trying to find the fun, actually, study that I really enjoyed reading from the scientists who were trying to be real sneaky about it. They're the ones who actually contacted like a soap making company for a chemical to figure out these toxicities. And when they used them on rats and frogs and things like that, and there was a lot of, I'm going to show you some rat and frog studies there, and they found that it was all toxic. It was all toxic, but that glyphosate was actually the least toxic of the ingredients, but that when you mix them with all the inert ingredients. Now the question is,
hang on,
why?
you went over that too fast. And I know you probably already said it, but it's important, it's worth repeating. Glyphosate, which is the one that's the only one that they test, okay, is the least toxic of all of the ingredients in Roundup. And so now they're saying Roundup is safe, but they're only testing the least toxic ingredient in it.
Right. And the question is, why is it Roundup letting everybody know what chemicals are in their formulations? These scientists,
you have to ask that question, really.
These scientists had to get 9 different bottles of it and figure it out themselves and break it down themselves, because Roundup's not going to tell you.
No way.
Not going to tell you, because they know that through these hidden documents that we're kind of figuring out that they have been doctoring these studies, and then they've only been using the glyphosate.
But you guys, they're not just keeping the ingredients secret like Coca-Cola or something, where they got to keep their special recipe. You know, we can't let it get. They're keeping it secret because they don't want to let you know that they are killing society.
Right. There is this is going to be kind of scientific, technical, whatever.
They can borrow.
The endocrine disrupting effects of all these compounds are measured on aromatase activity, a key enzyme in the balance of the sex hormones. Below the toxicity threshold, aromatase activity was decreased both by the coformulants alone, the POEA we were talking about, and the alkali, the APG, and by other formulations from concentrations 800 times lower than the agriculture dilutions, while G exerted an effect at glyphosate exerted effect only at 1/3 of the agricultural dilution. So what they're saying is when you use it's the combination of this Roundup that's really causing the trouble. But there is still a problem with the glyphosate.
Absolutely.
But Roundup and Monsanto manufacturers have been able to use that discrepancy and say it's kind of safe when this is literally at 800 times lower. And we are all wondering, why is the sperm count lowering? It tends to affect the male reproduction that rather than the female reproduction.
Well, okay, no. But we were talking about it penetrates the umbilical line, so they're not focusing as much on what's happening to these babies inside of their moms. We have these birth defects. We know that they're happening. We know that the umbilical line is more susceptible to the penetration of these chemicals. And I know, I'm telling you, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person looking at cause and effect.
Right. Reproductive health is influenced by environmental toxicants, including pesticides. The declared active ingredients of pesticide formulations are not applied in their isolated form in agricultural use. Their substances, their co-formulants, are also added in order to modify the physiochemical properties or to improve penetration or stability. The identity of the co-formulants declared as inert is generally kept confidential. Moreover, they are not used in medium or long-term in vivo toxicity tests of pesticides on mammals for the establishment of their daily acceptable intake. However, pesticide formulations and co-formulants alone have been demonstrated to be up to 1,000 times more toxic to human cells than just the active ingredients. And I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave these studies here. But that is the bottom line, is that Monsanto does not want you breaking their formula apart, does not want it to be tested, only wants glyphosate to be tested because they know how to manipulate that data. I'm not saying that's good data. They know how to manipulate that data.
And we have proof that they have been manipulating the data, and we are hopeful for these 2 men specifically, which is what Leah started out to talk about, but we didn't cover it very much. There are 2 men that are leveling an accusation and a lawsuit.
People, but these main 2 guys, I guess.
They started it.
Yeah.
Because they have the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Right.
And they're like, listen, I worked with Roundup and I was told that it was safe. And so now they're suing, and I am very, very happy about this. I think that we are seeing Monsanto's reign, and specifically Roundup's reign, about to collapse.
I'm really hoping, and I know that this seems like a lot, and I know that we're going to do some deep chemical things, but I'm floored. I'm so excited. Why? Because I'm not excited that Roundup is being proven to do these things. I'm excited that the truth is coming to the front. I wanted to read to you just a couple of these tiny little studies. This was the toxicity of glyphosate-based pesticides on 4 North American frog species. That doesn't sound very exciting to you. It was exciting to me because finally something is being let known, being put out there. Okay, so we've got the POEA commonly used in the glyphosate-based herbicides and 5 newer glyphosate formulations, and they use these different formulations for clamitins, acute toxicity values in order of decreasing toxicity. So in order of decreasing toxicity were the POEA, the Roundup Original, Roundup Transorb, and the Glypho-AU. No significant acute toxicity was observed with glyphosate technical material or the glyphosate formulations Roundup Bioactive Touchdown or Glypho-Bio. Comparisons between the 4 amphibian species showed that toxicity of Roundup Original varied with species in developmental stage. Pipians, tadpoles chronically exposed to environmentally relevant concentrations of POEA or glyphosate formulations containing POEA showed decreased snout vent length at metamorphosis and increased time to metamorphosis, tail damage, and gonadal abnormalities. These effects may be caused in some part by disruption of the hormone signaling because thyroid hormone receptor, basically, they could not develop very well into their, receptive,
Right.
So they're same kind of thing for the Australian frogs and then in rats. And
this was awful.
Yeah, so we were talking about the glyphosate POEA elicited immediate respiratory effects which were more severe and which lasted longer in the groups receiving the POEA containing preparations than in the glyphosate alone group. By 1H, all test preparations had caused deaths, but more occurred from the POEA containing preparations than from glyphosate.
Meaning it all killed. They
Right.
all had deaths.
The PO administrations of POEA, 1 gram kilogram, the mixture of glyphosate, and these are the numbers you can read, or Roundup, produced diarrhea and blood-stained weeping from noses. Death was only seen from the POEA at 24H, glyphosate at the 2 grams, produced transient diarrhea without nosebleeds. POEA caused diarrhea at 1H, and the mixture of POEA plus glyphosate produced diarrhea later that increased in severity with time. Bloody nose secretions were seen only with the preparations that contained POEA, and no secretions were given to those who were given controls given saline. So those are the controls. And
I told Leah, I said, listen, I got to tell you guys something. I'm not PETA or whatever, but if we have to test something
Right.
on animals to find out whether it is going to cause birth defects or death, then that's a product that just doesn't get used.
Right.
It's that simple. When you have herbal remedies such as lavender and tea tree oil, you're not going to test that for death.
Right.
Okay? And that's we've gotten to this cold-hearted society where we think, oh, we can just test these things, whatever. I know you probably have a lot more to cover, but my mom, Patriot Gallery, wanted me to round off this episode, and we're already at 35 minutes here on this episode. But you guys had to stick with us because this is really important.
I could go on and on. There's so much here talking about how the food safety people, the EPAs, they mess with studies. You can take my word for it. You can read the things yourselves. They mess with the studies. The EPA messed with studies. They said they covered studies with inert ingredients, but they didn't. It was just glyphosate, so they had to retract.
Right. And you know what? The government has been also behind this massive cover-up. So don't. But I want to leave with a message of hope because that's what the Patriot Gallery always says.
I'm so excited about this.
Here is how we fix it, because I had said earlier that the farmers don't have a choice at this point because the ground, you guys may not know much about the soil, when you use those chemicals and fertilizers, then the ground literally won't grow anything without that. It becomes dependent upon it. So like Joel Salatin, and if you guys aren't following him, you need to be, did with his land in Virginia that had a bunch of rocks on it. He ran cattle and cattle and cattle, and what do cattle do? They poo. And so he has how many feet feet of new soil on top of his rock. So how do we repair the earth? We have to add new soil by farming and by raising animals and doing those things. Like my mom always says, we don't seek after money, we don't seek after fame, but we do farm. And that's what we're repairing our plot of land. And so everybody where you're at, you need to repair your plot of land or get your little plot of land and repair it. And that is how we're going to take back what these people have done, because if we don't stop it now, future generations are going to be left holding the bag of nothing. And I was again listening to the Creature from Jekyll Isle, and I'm listening to Thomas Jefferson, and he was making a cause against central banks and the debt, but the same thing applies here, that you know what, every generation should be treated as its own government, its own people, or whatever, and whatever choices they want to make for that generation is up to them. But what you cannot do is make a decision that is going to negatively affect the future generation. And that is from Thomas Jefferson himself. All right, you guys, this is Leah Michelle signing off for Resistance Chicks, where it is not just a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks, both of our channels. Ring the bell for notifications. Find us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Share these on your social media pages. We love you. God loves you. God bless. I was cold all alone. No place for